Welcome to Be the Game, the business of sport. I'm your host, Katrina Adams. Today we sit down with a true trailblazer, Cynt Marshall, the first Black woman to serve as the CEO of an NBA franchise, the Dallas Mavericks. Cynt has spent decades leading transformation in corporate America and now in professional sports, turning culture into a competitive advantage. On today's episode, we'll explore leadership, representation, strategy, mentorship, and how faith and family have guided her decisions through some tough challenges in sports and business. Let's begin at the moment she stepped into history making shoes. Cynt, welcome. It is so exciting to have you here and have this conversation today. It is a thrill to have you on Be the Game, the business of sport.
Thank you. It's so good to see you, my sister. Oh my goodness. And I'm so excited about Be the Game.
Oh yes, this is a thrill.
Yes.
So you were the first Black woman to be the NBA CEO of the Dallas Mavericks, and you stepped into a franchise that was in crisis. What was the biggest moment and the toughest decision that you had to make stepping into that franchise?
Okay, first of all, just the tough decision of whether or not I wanted to do it. Because, of course, when Mark Cuban called, I just had a decision to make. Do I kind of come out of retirement and go and take on this heavy task? And I knew it was a big task, but I didn't know it was as big as it was until I actually stepped in the building and spent 3 hours with employees before Mark even knew I was in the building. So he didn't even know I had said yes yet. And when they were just telling me about the things that were going on, and especially the women talking to me, I thought, okay, I've got to pull it all together. And I had, worked with a team of people to transform cultures before. But the biggest decision was at first, what kind of vision was I going to set out for the organization? And then who was I going to get around that leadership table to help me? Because I knew I was going to have to make some changes.
So was it driven more by culture, performance, or long-term strategy of how you were approaching this?
I think I approached it more around the culture because it was such a glaring need to change the culture. And that's actually the mandate that Mark gave me, was to change the culture, that something is wrong here. And he wanted me to address it. And so it wasn't about long-term strategy. Obviously, once I got into the job, we laid out a business plan and did some strategic planning, long and short term. But the decision was based on culture, that this place needs a different culture. I think I'm uniquely equipped to lead that effort. Obviously, I can't do it by myself. I'm a big team person. But I think I know the recipe to help change the culture. And so it was driven by that. And that's where I focused.
Well, I think the biggest thing of that culture change wasn't that you were Black, you were a woman. And that in itself was challenging, wasn't it?
It was. I mean, people, I always say there's a uniqueness to being the only or the first or whatever, which I didn't know I was the first until I was getting interviewed by somebody. And they told me I was the first Black woman to lead a team as a CEO. So I didn't even know that. But it is unique because you walk into a male-dominated culture. But I've worked in a male-dominated culture my entire career. I mean, I worked in technology and telecommunications. So I knew people were going to have an issue with that. But some were real blatant about it. Just flat out told me, one person who reported to me told me that there's no way, a woman could do the job. That what was happening there was that's just a culture of sports. And I was a 90-day PR stunt that Mark Cuban was pulling off for the media, which I thought was crazy, which obviously it was a 7-year tenure. So, yeah, but it was, people didn't like having a woman in that job. And, some people know some of the threats and security issues that I had to deal with, but we dealt with it.
Well, when you're talking about leading a franchise in transition, it's really about strategy. And so when you're creating that vision for others, it's about trust. And so let's talk about representation next. And so basketball has some of the most successful Black athletes. And yet executive rooms, we don't see a lot of Black people in those rooms. Why is it so important to have more Black representation in the executive rooms?
Well, first of all, okay, that was actually surprising to me, that when I walked in, that there were no women or people of color at my leadership team table. I was surprised. I never worked in sports, and I never focused on the business side of it. I'm a fan. I focus on what's on the court, what's on the field. So that was surprising to me. And I knew that's something I had to address immediately because I truly believe in representation. I believe that the leadership team needs to reflect the demographics of the fan base, the demographics of where we live. I mean, all of that. So I knew, I know the business case, so I knew we would have to do something different. And so I just said, you know what? These little boys and girls coming to these games, they need to see people who look like us. And not just the little black boys and girls. Everybody needs to see us in these jobs so that we can set the proper expectations in life and just the proper expectations about who can do what. And so that's what I loved about being able to diversify the leadership team. Yes, I had a high profile job because of the nature of, how I got there, but it was also an opportunity to show people that a black woman can do this job, a woman can do this job, so that at some point in time, there won't even be a question. And then you get the people coming up the pipeline, the little boys and girls, the young professionals saying, I can do that. And she did it without knowing the business of basketball. So what are the skills needed for that? So now it's in somebody's psyche that they actually can have an executive job in sports, that it's beyond just, it's beyond being a player, which is amazing because the athletes are incredible. But if you're not a fabulous athlete, you can still work in sports and you can still have an executive job, a corporate job, and do it in basketball or in football. And right now you don't see, black owners. And so now we can start to change the mindset. I can do that. I can own a team. I can be a part of that ecosystem. I can run a team. I can have a media company that's broadcasting games. So, and that's what I love actually about Be the Game, is that people will now see that this is a business and it's a very lucrative business. There are trillions of dollars in this business. And so seeing people like me, people like you, it is not lost on me that you were the president and chairperson of the U.S. Tennis Association for 4 years?
Yes.
You're the only one that had 2 consecutive terms?
Yes.
Okay, now I know we're interviewing me. But you got to say something about that because you know how important that is for kids playing tennis to see that. So you just talk about that for a minute too, and we'll get back to me.
No, absolutely. I did serve as the head of the USTA from 2015 through 2018, and it was a very exciting time for me and so important for our young kids to see that leadership at the top of our sport, particularly when I was the first and the only one
Yes.
at that time. But it's not about me saying
But
it.
they
is
need to
about
see
you.
it, though. They need to see it, and everybody needs to see it. I mean, others. I would always say what I wanted my legacy to be, or part of my legacy, is that these people, these owners who are picking these CEOs and presidents of teams, that they wouldn't even think twice about considering a black woman or a woman in the job. That they wouldn't even think twice about it because Cynt Marshall did a great job and she showed us that women can do these jobs. And so I just want it to be no big deal, but somebody has to get it started.
No, absolutely. As we are seeing that in other leadership roles now and in the NFL and other teams of the NBA. With some of the ladies.
Sandra Douglas.
Yes.
Douglas,
absolutely. And now also with Shelly Kayat Wesson as she's moving up. And we saw it with Swin Cash when she was in her role. So you have definitely been a trailblazer and a pioneer. And so, when we talk about what you have just mentioned with some of the young boys and girls in senior leadership roles, while you were at the Mavericks, did you put anything in place with your athletes, though, to mentor them in wanting to pivot after their careers to go into leadership roles?
Yes, one of the things we focused on a lot was, so when the players come in, we get new players, but even the ones who already exist, every year, my staff, including me, we sit down with them. We sit down with their whole team to find out kind of what are some of their philanthropic initiatives, where they want to take that. And then we talk about business. What kind of things are they interested in? Because what we try to do in the off season is make sure they get exposure to different businesses. So try to connect them to business leaders. In fact, as I was leaving, we were starting a mentoring program where we had identified some executives in businesses, some entrepreneurs, and we were pairing them with the players who would be around for the summer or find out, kind of like where they were going, because it's bigger than basketball. And they have lives outside of basketball now, but they'll really have more of a life outside of basketball when they leave. And so we did a lot to try to make sure they could see things. And we have something we do every year called the business of basketball. So it's a day that we spend with the players. We show them the actual business of basketball, kind of what we do. But then I had this bright idea that we would start to bring outside people in so they could see business in general and connect it to what they're interested in. So you got to focus on it because they have lives.
No,
they have
I love
lives,
that.
and they will have lives when they leave here. And then you help them with, especially some of the younger ones who don't have a big support system, how to handle their money, all that kind of stuff, because you want them to be successful.
No, I love that. I'm going to stay on the diversity side just a little bit longer and on your leadership team, because of the changes that you made when you joined the Mavericks. You had 50% of your leadership team were women.
And 50% people of color.
And 50% with people
within
of color.
100 days.
So how did you accomplish that? And what was the driving force behind that? Was it organic or intentional?
Okay, it was intentional, very intentional. So when I walked into the Mavs, I said, the vision, this is literally my first press conference. I said, our vision is going to be that we are going to set the global standard in diversity and inclusion in the NBA. We will set the standard because I know the business case, and I know in order for us to be successful as an organization, we've got to have inclusion as a priority. And so I wasn't afraid to say it. I just got out there and said it. So that was the vision. I said our values will spell crafts: character, respect, authenticity, fairness, so a big focus on equity, teamwork, and safety, both physical and emotional. So I focused a lot on fairness and the equity piece. And so not having anybody at the table that looked like me, or women, or Black, or people of color, that's not fairness, because I know people are qualified, okay? And not throwing shade on anybody who was sitting there, but we needed to make some changes. And so it was very intentional. And then we put together a 100-day plan, and two parts of that were expressly focused on an agenda for women, an agenda to empower, educate, elevate women, because there was definitely a need for it, and then cultural transformation around inclusion and putting employee resource groups in place and putting things in place, different kind of training sessions around culture, just all that. We were very intentional. And so we ended up winning the NBA's Inclusion Award 2 years in a row because we focused a lot on it. We put together a Dallas Mavericks Advisory Council made up of like 30 external people that looked like Dallas to help us kind of, run our business. When I would walk around and I'd look at the courtside seats and all that, I would ask the question, where's the diversity courtside? So we addressed that. Every aspect of our business, our vendors, I looked at the vendor list, and this is the stuff I was asking for. I mean, my very first request of my CFO was give me a list of all the salaries and break it down by gender and ethnicity, top to bottom. They brought it back. No, they didn't break it down at all. And I said, you know what? I'll sit here with you all night because it's important to me. I need to know who's in here, and I need to know who's not in here. I need to know who's getting paid. And so we went through all of that. And so you got to gather your data. And I gathered all my data around the employee base, around pay, around where our philanthropic dollars were going. And they weren't going, everywhere that they, in my opinion, they should have been going. So I just put the whole plan together with some people. I appointed somebody to be our VP of inclusion. And we just got the show on the road. And one thing we did, we talked to all of our employees about this, about fairness and what it looks like, about what equity looks like, about why it's important, about the business case. I mean, we wanted everybody to kind of buy in to this. And so our workplace promise, and this is what I put in place with the vision, values, the 100-day plan, and the diverse leadership team, the workplace promise. And if you walk into the Mavs, you'll see it right now. It said every voice matters and everybody belongs.
I mean, those are some truly tough decisions that you made, because that was really about changing character within the culture of an organization, of a league, really.
Yes.
Right? It wasn't just an organization. This was about a league that these teams had not seen. and you set the example and the tone that we really have started to see from team to team. So congratulations on that. And you had
Thank
an
you.
owner that believed in you.
And that's what it's about. And so, people focus a lot on, me being the first and all that. Mark Cuban made that decision. And what I love about it, Mark Cuban wasn't trying to make history. He was just trying to make a difference for his people. And he thought that I could do it. And he encouraged me every step of the way. He never tried to stop me from doing anything. He was there and he was bought in. And he bought into this whole notion of inclusion and how sometimes you have to meet people where they are and then get them in the pipeline. I mean, he bought into all of that, which I'm glad he did. And he will say that he learned a lot in the process, but then I learned a lot in the process too, because then he taught me the business of basketball.
Well, it also shows a level of accountability. Did it teach you anything about leadership or resilience that you didn't already know?
I know a lot about resilience just because of things in my life and, of course, a 36-year career at AT&T. So I know a lot about resilience. But I think it actually kind of became a muscle because I had developed it as a muscle probably by the first year in that job, because so many things were happening so fast. I mean, over a course of a 36-year career, things happen throughout the process, right? Over the course of literally like the first 90 days, stuff was happening so fast. Bad things were happening. Haters were out there. Internally crazy stuff was happening. I had to make quick decisions. And so I learned that every time we'd get knocked down on something, I got to get back up quick. Like I got to get back up by tomorrow. I also learned the importance of the resilience of a team of people. Because of course I can focus on my own resilience, but the team has to be resilient and the organization had to be resilient. So that's what it taught me. It taught me that an organization can actually bounce back and recover and be resilient with the right people around the table, and not just my table, but every table in the organization. So I would actually say I'm proud of the fact that we are a resilient organization, and we've had to bounce back from a whole lot of stuff, even recently. But I think we got the muscle to do it.
When flexing that muscle, I think early on with all the challenges that you all as an organization faced, how were you able to maintain that voice and authority during that transition?
First of all, when I took in that job and I knew what I was taking on. I mean, I knew there was a lot of stuff I didn't know about, but that's okay. I mean, you never know. It's everything you're getting, but I knew it was a big job, right? When I walked into that first press conference and I saw all those cameras, that caught me off guard. So I thought, okay, this is huge. So I don't think I had an idea how big it was just kind of globally, right? I didn't know that. But I knew I had a job to do. And I knew based on everything Mark told me that I had a job to do. And so I just got in there. I just got in there. I just got in there.
Well, you did an excellent job, that's for sure. So,
well, he was there with me though, and so I give him a lot of credit because he made the decision, and he said, you just know what to do. I know your history because he had done his homework.
Right.
It's not like it was just a cold call out of nowhere. He had done his homework, but then I also got the right people at the table, so then we could do what we needed to do, because there was just a lot to be done. It was a culture that we had to change.
right.
I mean, when I had the guy tell me, what is the big deal? This is how it is in sports.
Yeah,
It's kind of the women.
It's a
The women are
beast.
kind of like, it's like, what? I mean, what in the world?
It's a beast.
Because that's not what I was used to. Because I saw AT&T evolve. I mean, so I saw corporate America kind of evolve, right? And I was a part of that. And then to walk into this culture that actually was backwards to me, but to have an owner who said, I want to get this right. And so when Adam Silver had a press conference, let's say I got a job in March, press conference in September after the Board of Governors meeting, and laid out kind of this checklist of things we had done, and then said he wanted all the other teams to follow suit. I thought, okay, this is big, and we're changing something. We're actually transforming.
Well, not only did you have the support of an owner, you had the support of the commissioner.
Oh,
That's
which
huge.
is wonderful. I love Adam Silver.
So you had the ultimate leader who had your back.
Okay, so let me tell you. So I get this job. It's the end of February, right? And so the first big thing that I was doing that had nothing to do with this job was coming to the Black Enterprise Women of Power Summit. So I get here, and Adam Silver called me as I was on my way. I just checked in, and I was on my way to the hotel room, and he called me. And he said, Cynt, this is Adam Silver. He told me who he was. I said, sir, I know who you are. And he said, I want you to have my personal cell phone number. I said, what? He said, I need you to have my number in case you need to call me for anything. You can call me. I'm here for you. Do what you need to do. And he wanted me to have his number, not just Mark Cuban's number. And so he was very, very supportive every step of the way. And then his team was supportive. And then, and even here at the Black Enterprise Women of Power Summit, people like Pam Eel, Kathy Francis, Katrina Adams, okay, everybody just showed up for me. Caroline Clark, wanting me to be successful, connecting me with people who knew sports, people who were
going to make sure
in it.
you were going to succeed, girl.
And I didn't even know y'all, okay? You remember we were sitting there, I was crying. I'm like, these sisters are sitting here pouring into me, and you all knew I was the first. I didn't know I was the first, okay? Y'all were pouring into me so that I could be successful, understand the business of sports, and do what I needed to do, because y'all knew I didn't know that.
Well, we knew that.
I'll never forget that. I will never forget that. I will love y'all forever.
Well, we wanted to make sure, and you did. And so this is a great segue, because I want to talk about the business of the NBA.
Okay.
Because you've led teams from the AT&T and now the NBA. So what skills do today's sports executives need that leaders 10 to 15 years ago did not have?
Okay, I think you need strong business acumen. And when I say that, you need to understand profit and loss. You need to understand what's driving your business. You need to understand analytics. You need to understand geographies, because most of our teams have more than half of our fans are international. So you got to understand the international markets and all that. I think you definitely have to have emotional intelligence. It truly is about the people, and understand who they are and figure out how to meet them where they live. You know, I have a leadership philosophy that I call the 3 L's. And in order for me to be an effective leader, I think there's 3 things that I have to do extremely well. Listen to the people, learn from the people, and love the people. And so that's my 3 L's. And so listen to them at a level where you can hear what they're not even saying. And so when I had my one-on-ones I literally had a one-on-one with every single employee at the Mavs when I got there. And I could hear things, and then I'd figure out what they were not saying. And that helped me, kind of perfect, our 100-day plan. So listen at a level where you can even hear what they're not saying. Learn from them, get in there with them and learn the job. Not to be an expert, because they're the experts, but learn enough where you can serve them quickly, because that's what leadership is all about, being a servant leader, where you can serve them quickly, that you don't have, if people say, well, I need the resources for this, you don't have to go spend the next 6 months trying to figure out, well, what is the job and why do they need it and all that. You know enough about it to respond to the people quickly. So spending the time, sitting with them, sitting at their desk, going out, riding with them on their jobs. Just so you can know it for the pure reason of serving them. And then loving them as people. And especially these days, because you have all kind of generations. You got 4 generations probably in the workplace. And so loving them and understanding who they are, what their dreams are, what their aspirations are, what they want, how they want it, what's important to them. And that really paid off for us during COVID, because people need different things. And so all of that kind of emotional intelligence and loving them as people, not as employees. That's different from when I started. Now, I'm a unique kind of leader, but that's different than the kind of leadership that I was under, that most of us were under, kind of back in the day. It was more kind of command control. You're an employee, leave your personal life at home. We're not going to meet you where you are. You're going to meet us here in this workplace and do what we need you to do. And it's different now. It's totally different. And especially like in sports, it is truly a business. So I can't stress the business acumen enough, which is why Mark said he thought I would be successful in the job, because I was a businesswoman. And so all the things I knew about strategy, about business planning because we didn't have a business plan. So I had to instill a robust business planning process. So we didn't have that. We didn't have long-term plans. We didn't have any of that. That just wasn't the nature of it. It was kind of season to season, and it was about keeping the, they called it, keeping the butts in seats, right? And I'm like, no, it's more than that, okay? Because we got to take care of these people who are sitting in these seats. We got to know how to cater to them. We have to know how they want to get their information, especially in the world of technology and all that. We've got to serve them in a different way. And especially that's important now as we're building new arenas and all that. And we had some great chief technology officers, but that's a big part of the business. So the whole world has changed in how you serve your customers. And so you got to know all of that. We got to know all that.
Which goes to my second question, in this role as a CEO of an NBA franchise, it's the excitement of the sport, right? How do you transition or make sure that you keep the business part separate from the excitement of the sport and the glam of the players and really focusing on the financials of the business of the sport?
It is a business.
Right.
I mean, that's number one. It is a business. And so in the off season, I have a robust business planning process in place where everybody contributes because that's important to me. Everybody kind of looks at the data and we decide, okay, what do we want our financial goals to be, based on, the environment, et cetera, et cetera. And do we need to change anything if in the model? For example, we ended up going to Mavs TV and moving away from the traditional broadcasting strategy, knowing we would take a financial hit, but long term, we knew it would pay off. So exactly when would it pay off? So how do we need to do that? So changing our business model, changing our approach, looking at how we serve our employees. So the financials, the employees, what do we need to do for the community? Just looking at all that, every aspect of our business, you got to look at because you're the CEO, and you got to make sure it's profitable, and you hope you are, but you're not going to always go to the playoffs. So you got to make sure you figure out how you're going to be profitable, even if your season ends in the middle of April. And then, of course, like challenges during COVID, you got to figure out how you're going to make money because you got employees to feed, you got players to pay, you got all that. And so who are going to be your sponsors? You got to go and figure out the right kind of sponsors, ones that, can help to elevate your brand. I mean, so you got to be very thoughtful about that. So it's all of that. I mean, because your revenue is coming from ticket sales, sponsorships, just from a variety of places, and you got to figure all that out. And it's an everyday grind, and it's fun. And then you get to focus on going to 82 games. And so half of them are at home. So that whole arena experience, all that, you got to put that on. So you got to make sure the lines aren't too long, that everything that's happening in the arena is happening the way it's supposed to happen. Okay, so here's one thing that I never paid attention to until I got in this job. So I'm sitting there one day and I see so I'm watching the big jumbotron and all that, and I see a little flicker. I never paid attention to that. Well, then my text messages are going off because we're trying to figure out, okay, do we have a problem with the scoreboard? I never thought about that. I mean, do you think about that when you go to a game? Everything is just working. And actually something happened to me. I said, oh my goodness, if this thing went out right now, like that's my job, okay? That is my job. Okay, so then it made me really focus on getting my chief technology officer. And so, okay, in the off season, and actually we needed a new jumbotron. So it's like, okay, so how much is that going to cost? Is that in the plan? Let's build that in the plan. It's all that kind of stuff in the arena that I just never thought about. Do we need new seats? Is the roof leaking? I mean, all of that. And so a lot of times you won't see the person, the CEO or their team sitting in the seats. I mean, sometimes you will, but before the games, I mean, people are walking around and there's always somebody on point that's checking out everything. That's why you have to have a great team. And so once you actually get to sit down and take a deep breath and watch the game, I mean, you're not going to be in your seat your whole time because I spend half my game going to visit sponsors, doing the things they need me to do and all that. And then, you pass out checks. So that's kind of the fun part. But the other part is fun too, because it's like you're problem solving every single day. And then, those, and you get your financials right after the game. So you know how many people showed up, kind of what the drop count was, how many showed up, based on how many tickets you got out there. So you get like real-time metrics. But that's another thing. You got to make sure you have good processes and systems in place so you can get the metrics and the results that you need almost real time. Okay, was the food good tonight? Well, the fans will tell you, hated the food tonight. or I love the food tonight.
Right.
I mean, it's all of that. So there's so many intricacies to it that I never thought about just going as a fan, and it's fun.
No, that's awesome. I mean, in a 20-hour day, so I'm
Yeah.
sure it's exhausting. Leadership is grounded in personal values. So I want to dive into yours a little bit because, you've spoken openly about how faith and family, guides your life.
Yes,
So
everything.
how has it shaped the way that you've navigated adversity and make complex decisions?
It's all about my faith. Even when Mark asked me about this job, and I spent 55 minutes with him in his office, left his office, and I told him, I said, I'm going to go home and pray about it, and I'll call you tomorrow. And he said, you're going to pray about it? I said, I pray about everything. And I just told him from the beginning, I said, my faith is everything. I said, so let me tell you something right now. And he just looked, he was just so open to what, to hearing more about it. And I said, if you tell me to do something, but I go in my prayer closet at home and I'm guided, the Lord guides me to do something else, I'm going with what's guided in my prayer closet, not what Mark Cuban told me. And he said, well, tell me about your prayer closet. And I said, oh, it's this little place I go in. And so I just went by, right? He said, no, I genuinely want to know about your prayer closet. I guess it was giving him some insight
Right.
to who I was.
Absolutely.
And so I said, well, when I first got married and we lived in an apartment, I just had a little bench in my house where I'd go, and it's just my time to kind of steady myself and just kind of get grounded because I have faith that something bigger is working. Okay. And so every job I've ever been in, I always ask two questions. Lord, what is it that you will have me to do for this organization? I got something to get done. I got some goods to deliver. What am I supposed to do? Just guide me every day. What am I supposed to do? But then who am I supposed to touch? Because I'm here for a person. I'm here for people. And so if this is the job I'm supposed to take, make it real clear to me, which he did. And then I'm going to go in there by faith and do it and get that guidance every day. So my faith is everything to me. My mother is a woman of faith, and that's how she raised us to know. My favorite scripture is Jeremiah 29:11 that says, for I know the plans I have for you, plans to prosper and not harm you, plans to give you hope in the future. And so even if I'm having a bad day or something bad is going wrong, I have to stop and say, okay, the plans I laid out, that's okay because I need to plan, but there is a plan for my life that is a good plan. And it's one for me to prosper, and it's one for me to have a future. So I can rest on that. I may not be able to see it right now, but I can rest on it. It's going to be okay because I have faith. The evidence of things hoped for. What is it? Evidence of things hoped for. And I just can't see it. I can't see it, but I have faith. The substance of things. So
But we
I
have to
faith.
have that, and it's important for you to be able to rest on it.
Right. It's the
and
substance
trust
of
it.
things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen.
Absolutely.
Right. I have it.
And that you do, and we've seen that, and we talk about that often, which is great. And and I know how important family is for you.
Oh my
And
goodness.
it's a guiding principle for you. So
And the Lord blessed us. You know, the Lord made my family.
absolutely,
I had four second trimester miscarriages and a daughter who died at 6 months old. And I just had to rely on faith that the Lord knew I wanted a family, didn't know exactly how I was going to have the family. And then through a series of circumstances, I ended up with these four adopted kids, and they are wonderful. They're all grown up now. My monsters are all grown up. But he gave me a family. And it just, you go through stuff like that, it just increases your faith. And so people ask me a lot, well, tell me about your faith, and how do you just stay positive and all that? And I just say I have the receipts, because so many times in my life, I saw the Lord show up for my mother with all the stuff she was going through. He showed up for me. He showed up for my family members. He just always show up. So I just believe God and great people like you and the posse who showed up for me
Absolutely.
when I first got that job. They just always show up in my life. They just show up.
absolutely. So tell us how these the value of protecting or of having these family values have led your decisions of leading and protecting them in this organization.
Well, first of all, I think it helps me. I'm very sensitive to employees in their lives. So because family is important to me. I just assume it's important to me. So I make sure we have very family friendly kind of policies at work. I make sure my family is protected. So even with, security issues and all that kind of stuff, I make sure that I don't put them out there that much, and that even when they're with me, that they're okay. I mean, that's important to me. I make sure I'm mommy first. So no matter what, I practice this thing called crystal balls and rubber balls, and that's how I, establish my priorities. And so if you drop a crystal ball, it shatters, it never comes back. Okay, rubber balls bounce back, or they bounce away because they never should have been there in the first place, or you can throw it to somebody and they'll take it. You delegate it, right? So at home, sister, I have a crystal ball and 3 rubber balls always on my desk. And so when it comes to family, when it comes to work, I say, okay, is this a crystal ball? If I drop it, will it shatter and never come back? Like the first day of school was a crystal ball for me. My son had his first high school swim meet in a new school one time when they wanted me to do some work, AT&T in Washington, D.C. I said, well, I can't miss Wednesday afternoon because that's a crystal ball for me. And then some things will bounce back, right? And then I'll say, okay, is this a rubber ball? Should I just get it off my plate, roll it away? It shouldn't be on there in the first place. Should I throw it to somebody and they can run with it? Or will it bounce back to me later? I live my life like that every single day. Most things are rubber. Most things are rubber balls. Few things are crystal balls. And so I try to make sure I handle the crystal balls and that there are ones that I need to handle. Sometimes it's a crystal ball my husband needs to handle, or it might be a crystal ball my chief of staff needs to handle. It's still important. But I handle the crystal, and the rubber is just like I just deal with it. And my family is a crystal ball. My faith is a crystal ball. I don't drop those.
I love that. I'm gonna have to remember that, the crystal ball and the rubber ball. And
I talk about it all the time in all my speeches. I will send you a crystal ball and 3 rubber balls.
I love that.
I will send that to you.
I love that.
And I have people who talk a lot about how that helped them just set their priorities. Because most things, think about it, most things really are rubber. And even like, when I got that big job at the Mavs, so much stuff was coming at me. I had to stop and say, okay, what's the most important thing right now? And it started out, we had a big investigation, so it was important. It was important to hear from some people. It was important to apologize. It was just important for me that we did certain things. It was important that I got a diverse leadership team in place. It was important. So I had my list of priorities. Yes, a 100-day plan, 200 initiatives, but I had the crystal ball list. And that's what I focused on. And then we got everything else done.
I love that. I'm locking it in. I'm locking it in, sis. I'm locking it in. So we talked about at the top about legacy.
Yes.
But I want to close. I want to wrap it up with that and bring it back to legacy.
Yes.
In leadership, because this is what it's all about for you.
What it's all about.
You've come full circle in so many ways in leadership and the paths that you have led and the footprints that you've left behind. So, leadership and legacy can be defined with measured in culture, access, and opportunity. For you, your legacy and your chapter with the Mavericks has closed.
Yes.
What do you want your leadership?
I'm still a consultant, though.
Oh, yes, but
not in that CEO
but as a
role.
CEO,
You're exactly right. You're exactly right.
But what do you want your leadership to have made possible? What is that legacy that you've left behind and the doors that you've opened? What do you want that legacy to mean for you?
You kind of said it. That's it. I want my legacy to be that she opened doors for people that were closed to them. That she opened doors and the doors remained open. And people were able to walk in and have access and get some big things done. They were respected. They were asked for their opinion. They were seen. Because so often, some of us aren't seen. And so that's what I want my legacy to be. She opened the door and it never closed again. She opened it in a way where it stayed open. That she did a good job. She included everybody, because inclusion is about everybody. Black, white, brown, young, elderly. It's about everybody. and that she really created with a team of people, because it's just not me, it's not one person, that I led a transformation that where you can prove that every voice matters and everybody belongs. And I did it, we did it, not just for the Dallas Mavericks, but we did it for an industry.
Well, I wholeheartedly believe that. Not that you did it just for the Mavericks, and not just for the NBA, but I think for sports as a whole. Because people were watching you, Cynt. People were watching, people were listening, and people have adopted crafts. They really have.
That means a lot. Thank
So
you,
before we
sister.
wrap, I want to do a fast break, some
Okay,
quick questions,
okay, okay.
if you will.
Sure, of course.
So
You have me as long as you want to have me. You
quick
showed up for
answers.
me from day
Oh, I
one.
appreciate you, boo. I appreciate it. Culture or performance?
Culture,
Mentor or sponsor?
sponsor,
Faith or strategy?
faith,
I knew that one. Bold move or measured risk?
bold move,
One word that defines your leadership style?
inclusive.
My girl. Thank you, Cynt Marshall, for sharing your journey, your leadership, and your vision for the next generation of executives. This has been a pleasure
My
to
pleasure.
sit here and
sister.
have this conversation. You are truly an inspiration. I really appreciate you.
I love you.
That's a wrap for this edition of Be the Game, the Business of Sport. Remember, don't just play the game. Learn it, lead it, and when you can, own the arena.